Hello, welcome to another Purple Insider Extra. Matthew Coller here, along with Sam Ekstrom. A reminder to listen to our longer conversations wherever you get your podcast. Just type in Purple Insider, and our written work, purpleinsider.substack.com. Okay, Sam, let's talk about Patrick Peterson for a moment, because he is on the field for the Vikings and OTAs wearing the number 7, which I think looks cool. And I love the fact that the NFL is now allowing cornerbacks to wear the number 7. Let's talk for a second about our expectations for Patrick Peterson and how important he is to the cornerback group this year. Are you buying that Mike Zimmer will be able to turn Patrick Peterson's late career back the opposite direction of where it's been going the last 2 seasons?
It's a huge question for this team. And to be honest, I have a little skepticism, and that hasn't changed since March. And in fact, there's more pressure than ever on Patrick Peterson, because I think at one point in free agency, we might have said, okay, the Vikings are 5 deep at cornerback. Jeff Gladney's back for another year. Mike Hughes is going to try again to kind of revive things. Both of them, Hughes has been traded. Gladney is up in the air. It might just be Peterson, Mackenzie Alexander, Cameron Dantzler. There's not a lot of depth anymore. So there's a lot of pressure on Patrick Peterson, and I don't doubt his durability. I just doubt his ability at this point, because ever since the drug test in 2019 that was positive, he hasn't been the same guy. He's got committed more penalties. He's allowed more completions. He's been targeted more often, which tells me that other teams are no longer afraid to throw his way. And I don't think Mike Zimmer is a coach that, can take pressure off his cornerbacks like the Colts did with Xavier Rhodes. Mike Zimmer expects a lot from his cornerbacks. He expects them to be able to perform sort of on an island and press people. And I think he has to have a very honest view of this if it's going to be successful. He needs to look at Patrick Peterson for who he is, not who he was, and try to get the most out of him that way. I would be concerned if he expects Patrick Peterson to be the 2017 version of himself.
I think that's a great point, that it really rests on Mike Zimmer, because if he tries to treat him like an island corner, as they had Xavier Rhodes do in his best years, I don't know how well that's going to work out. And maybe Zimmer was a little slow to adapt with Xavier Rhodes in the second half of 2019. I think he eventually did do a good job of adapting that role and rotating a little more toward the end of that season, but it kind of took until there were some meltdowns to get to that point. So from the very beginning, are we going to see an island corner Patrick Peterson who's left one-on-one with some, other teams' best wide receivers, maybe even Jamar Chase right off the beginning and DeAndre Hopkins in week 2. And then, of course, Seattle comes in with their great wide receivers, including DK Metcalf, who, of course, Patrick Peterson would be very familiar with Seattle from playing them many times. So are they going to use him like, you are the guy, you are taking on the top wide receiver each week? I think at 31 years old, that's probably not the best role for him. It's more to maybe own a side, to play a lot more zone coverage and protect him in the same ways that they tried to protect players like Jeff Gladney and Cameron Dantzler. Maybe you sacrifice a little bit, because when you have that island corner, it's an incredible boost for your defense, but I'm not sure that he's capable of doing that at this point. And 31 years old for corners, I mean, that's kind of old for that position. Maybe for edge rushers and offensive linemen it isn't, and quarterbacks, of course, but I think for corners, the minute you lose a step, things become a lot more challenging. So my question for you, Sam, is should the Vikings be looking at other veteran cornerbacks as a just in case, not only just in case Patrick Peterson doesn't work out the way that they hope, but even Cameron Dantzler, or again, with Jeff Gladney's situation, we don't know which way it's going. Should they be bringing in another veteran corner?
I think they should, and they've got the cap space to do it. And it's kind of a stacked free agency class even now. There are a lot of recognizable names that performed well in the past couple of years, especially in the slot. Nickel Roby-Coleman, Brian Poole, go a little further down, Darqueze Dennard. There are names that are legitimate that you can probably get for $1 million or $2 million. And reportedly, they talked with Brashad Breeland, and he might have kind of been thrown off by their offer that they made, or didn't really like it in Minnesota based on his tweets. But if I'm the Vikings, I'm not going to overpay, because there's so many options. There's not a lot of scarcity. I think you can get somebody fairly cheaply who can provide depth. There's probably a belief that Mackenzie Alexander could play outside in a pinch if you wanted to add some nickel depth. and McKenzie could be your backup outside, or you count on Chris Boyd. That's kind of the dark horse in all this. Can Chris Boyd be a viable corner on this team? Can Harrison Hand be a viable corner on this team? Until those questions get answered, I think you need a veteran to step in and add a little more firepower.
I like some of the things that I saw from Harrison Hand last year. He had that great interception against New Orleans and showed some on special teams. But if we're asking, should you bet on someone who's drafted in the 5th round or the 7th round in Chris Boyd's case, or bring in someone who's proven as a veteran? I mean, I'm going to go with the veteran guy and let the 5th rounder or the 7th rounder continue to develop. And if some point they're ready, then there are guys who are on 1-year contracts who can move along. But since we haven't been able to see them in training camp yet, we don't know how much someone like Harrison Hand has developed. I think you have to bring in a veteran corner. And if you don't like what you see, then you can always cut them at the end of camp, or if someone surprises you and emerges. But you think about even last year, Logan Ryan, Malcolm Butler, those guys were on the market toward the end of free agency, and going into training camp, they signed late, and yet they turned out to be very good signings for their team. And I think the Vikings can afford to be patient here, kind of wait to see who doesn't have a chair before August, and then get someone on a very cheap deal. And I think they could do this at multiple positions. And not only does it give you depth, but it also gives you a little bit of help if Patrick Peterson is not the guy that you want out there for 1,000 snaps. If you discover halfway through the season this isn't really working, you need to take some pressure off him and rotate, you'll actually have someone to do it. So I think that it would be very wise if they could bring someone in. So this has been another Purple Insider Extra. Remember, find our longer conversations wherever you get your podcasts. Just type in Purple Insider, and we will see you next time.